The title of today's video is, does setting goals help in healing childhood trauma? So there are a few things I'd like to look in this video. First, number one, I'd like to look at where setting goals can help, where it actually can be a good thing and a productive thing. Secondly, and this is probably where I'm going to spend most time, is where I think setting goals can be problematic, where it can actually work against our best interests when it comes to healing childhood trauma. And thirdly, I'd like to share with you what I do instead of setting goals. So you're not just left, you're saying, well, there are no goals, I'm just going to drift aimlessly. There is an alternative to setting goals. It isn't either setting goals or don't setting goals, but there is a third option that I'd like to share with you that has worked for me. So to begin with, let's look at goals. And when I'm talking about goals, I'm not talking about these goals. No, I am talking about these goals. The goals of aims, achievements, things that we set up in our mind that we would like to do and achieve in the future. So a goal is a basic an objective or an aim that you are taking actionable steps towards achieving. And they can be as broad and as abstract as I would like to love myself more, to as specific as I would like to stop drinking, or I would like to meditate 10 minutes a day, 5 times a week. And so they can cover both the detailed and the abstract. Now, where do I think goals can play a productive part in healing childhood trauma? Now, I think what they can do is help you get a clear sense of here's where I am, here are the things that I need to kind of do to get to this other place. And I think if you can, on one level, set goals and detach from them a little bit, or set goals and make them as kind of practical and as tangible as possible, I think can help clarify where you are, where you want to get to, and the various steps required in getting that. And I think that has a value in terms of just getting a mental, clear picture of present, future, and the steps that lead towards that. And for that, I think it has some value. To be honest, I think there are more problems than there are benefits of goals. And I'd like to share with you just why that is, particularly when it comes to healing childhood trauma. But what I can share with you is my personal experience of where goals have kind of got in the way, not necessarily because of the goals in and themselves. Setting a goal and saying, I want to do this by this date, and I need to do these things to get there, in of itself isn't necessarily bad. It's kind of neutral. The problem comes when you have a background of childhood trauma and you have issues of self-worth, you have issues of toxic shame, and on a deeper level, all of that is feeding itself into how you set goals, and more fundamentally, attaching your worth and value to the achievement of those goals. So that's where it becomes problematic. And that's where, when you're on this journey of healing childhood trauma, I would be wary of setting yourself up for disappointment and setting yourself up for ways and means to just basically feel bad about yourself. So let me share with you an example of how this can take place. Now, when I was 36, I came across this book. It's actually my wife's book by Brian Tracy. And you guessed it, it's called Goals. And the title of the book is Goals: How to Get Everything You Want Faster Than You Thought Possible. Wow, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to get everything they want very quickly? And I knew I did when I read it. And I read it and I was like really pumped. It was like a kind of a Tony Robbins motivational speech in a book, and I did value it. It was a good book. It kind of broke down what goals were and how you achieve them and how you sort of put them into bite-sized pieces and why they're really important in terms of creating a vision board and all this kind of stuff. And in the process of reading this book, I wrote down at 36 10 goals I wanted to have achieved by the time I was 40. Now, when I was 40, I was going through a difficult time when I was 40, and I came across this journal, and in this journal were kind of various writings and things I was recording at the time, and I found this page that came from reading this book, and on this page were the 10 things I wanted to achieve by the time I was 40. And you're probably guessing where this is going, that I hadn't achieved any of them. Actually, some of the things I'd set out to do had actually got worse. So I was like, I want to give up all my addictions. And by then I'd had I'd added a few addictions to the list. I wanted to speak fluent Spanish, and I'd got nowhere with it, probably got worse. I wanted to have a book published, and I don't think I'd written a sentence for a book. I think I even had a goal of dressing more elegantly or something ridiculous like that, and obviously that hadn't happened, still hasn't happened. And what the list was, just a list of failures and disappointments, and it was just a validation at the time of how pathetic I was, how useless I was, how I was just completely incapable of achieving anything. Actually, I'd regressed. And my goal list was really just a disappointment list, a aren't you pathetic list. And at the time, I really remember feeling really down about it and really down on myself and just like, God, like, look at me, look at this list, look at my reality, and look at the contrast between the two. Now when I look back as 46-year-old Ewan, and I look back at 40-year-old Ewan, and I look at 36-year-old Ewan, I actually have a lot of compassion for myself back then. Because what I can see that when I was 36, when I wrote this list down, what I was really doing was a list of how do I not be me? How do I do things and achieve things in a way that will make me feel good about myself? Because I'm really not this great person. I'm really quite pathetic. And if I push myself and drive myself, I may achieve certain things, like some kind of acclaim with a book, or obviously one of them was losing weight, and I think I'd put on more weight. And there was this feeling, what was driving a lot of these goals was a deep sense of low self-worth and self-hatred, and this delusion really that if I was only able to achieve these 10 things, I would care about myself, or I would feel valued and worth. I look back now and realize that when your self-worth is contingent on achieving external things, or even achieving internal things, then you have a problem. That if your self-worth isn't based on intrinsic understanding of your own divinity, your own beauty, your own depth, and your own wholeness, you have a problem. Because on an unconscious level, I can look back and think, I was just setting myself up to feel bad about myself. You can feel addicted to almost feeling shame. So part of me was like setting these obscure, radical goals to get there and prove how unworthy I was. But another level, I'm also aware that the nature of goal setting and the nature of pairing worth with achievement, it doesn't even work. So I can tell you there are things that I have achieved over the last 6 years that, X amount of years ago, I would think, oh, that's so amazing. I'd be so happy if I got to this arbitrary point. And guess what? I get there and I don't feel good. Or I tick that box and I'm not suddenly flooded with a wave of self-love and self-acceptance. What I normally do is then set something else. I meditate an hour a day. I should be meditating 2 hours a day. I do this. I should be doing that. And that aspect of me that's always unhappy and discontent with where I am never arrives at a point and says, I can relax. It's all good. I've achieved all my goals. I can just chill out for a few more years. No, it's always pushing. It's always driving. And that's where I feel, if you're coming into the journey of healing childhood trauma and you set all these goals, you have to be very vigilant and aware of where is this coming from? Like, where is this feeling of having to do this and do that to get somewhere? Where is it coming from inside yourself? Whose goals are these? How much have we internalized from our capitalist culture? How much have we internalized from our parents? How much are expressions of our self-shame? And that alone brings it into question. But on a deeper level, why can't I just be happy with where I am? What is wrong with saying, here I am, and here I am is good, without the fear of collapse or the fear of being lost? So this is where I feel like setting goals can be problematic. So what's the alternative? Well, for me, there is an alternative. And the way I describe it is more of a focus on process than outcome. So goals are very much sort of aim and objective orientated, where process is just process orientated. It's more focused on the present. It's more focused on giving yourself to what's in front of you. So for example, I have a meditation practice that I do stick with every day, but rather than saying, well, in that practice, I have the goal of getting to, my first jhana or this particular kind of absorption state or this samadhi, what I try to do is to say, look, I have a process where I commit myself to meditating every day. I follow this process in the meditation itself. And what arises out of that is natural. you know, what the outcome of that will come of its own natural cause. Rather than focusing on, I'm going to lose this amount of weight in this amount of time, I try to focus on eating healthy foods, having some kind of regular exercise routine, and trust whatever weight will or won't come off will come as a result of that process. So for me, process is more of a present orientation. It's more about saying, I'm going to give myself to the processes that I've set up and trust in the outcome. And it also comes from a feeling of trust on one level, that I trust in the process, that if I follow that process, things can happen naturally rather than this forced, I'm here and I need to get to there type objective. And it's, you know, but it's not easy because we're in a very goal-orientated culture. We're in a very goal-orientated world. We're encouraged to kind of set goals. You know, my kids are at high school. They've got the goal of, you know, finishing high school, which gives them the goal of getting to university, which gives them the goal of a job, and everything's so future-orientated. It's very easy to kind of internalize that and say, well, how do I apply that to healing childhood trauma? What are my goals and objectives, and how do I get there, and how do I crack that whip in order to move from here to there? And to let that go, you know, it can feel like you're a little bit lost, or it's like, well, what's going to motivate me? But what you're also doing is trusting in what's deeper inside of us, that as we really rest into a deeper sense of self-acceptance, where we really start to feel that our worth isn't contingent on things that we do, it's intrinsic to who we are, there is an energy that arises out of that, which is natural, which is peaceful. We don't feel that and think, you know what, I just want to sit on the couch and do nothing. Now, maybe some days we do, but there is a rhythm we start to feel that's more natural and more effortless, where we're in touch with this loving part of ourselves, with this self-accepting part of ourselves, and we don't just sit around and do nothing. So it isn't this sort of dichotomy where we're either forcing ourselves forward or slothfully lying back and doing nothing. That as we focus on process, as we focus on giving ourselves to what's in front of us, we do find that the motivation to move forward arises from more of a natural place and more of a peaceful place. And to me, that's sustainable. You know, it's sustainable for me to kind of develop and create support structures for processes that I feel are healthy and conducive than it is to say, well, you know, I'm going to do this, doing that. And it's not that I mean, I still fall for it. During lockdown, I'm like, you know, I'm going to get lockdown ripped. I mean, I didn't really think that, but I thought, yeah, I'm going to use this lockdown to do this, that, and the other. And yeah, some of that just didn't happen. So yeah, I can slip back into it. But it's helpful to remind myself to come back to processes rather than goals. And to do that, I have to have a trust in my deeper knowing, or that part of me that does things from a loving place rather than a forced place. And it's not easy, but I think if you get a feel for it, you'll find that it does actually work. So look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for coming. If you have, please like and subscribe. And it's been really nice talking to you, and please take care of yourself. Bye-bye.